Hi guys, we're going to start the new chapter, the autonomic nervous system today. And we're going to talk about what is autonomic nervous system, what are its basic division, and what are the effect of autonomic nervous system in different involuntary organs of our body. Okay, so we're going to talk about the overview, then relationship between ANS and peripheral nervous system, and then what are the autonomic neurons, how these neurons are different from other somatic motor neurons. Okay, then we're going to talk about the division of autonomic nervous system, then related neurotransmitters. What are the neurotransmitter in autonomic nervous system? There are two main types, adrenergic and cholinergic. We're going to talk about both of them. And then main organs in the brain involved in controlling the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so let's see here. Before I start here, I want to say something. Autonomic nervous system is basically the visceral motor system of the body. Again, autonomic nervous system is pure motor system which controls a visceral organ. Visceral organ means internal organs like your heart, your lungs, your GI tract, your urinary bladder, uterus, these things, internal organs, okay? Like every nervous system has a sensory pathway and motor pathway, but autonomic nervous system is purely motor system, but motor system which control visceral internal organs, okay? So autonomic nervous system, ANS, manage our physiology. The autonomic nervous system or visceral efferent, as I said earlier, visceral efferent means visceral motor nervous system that regulates visceral activities, that is activities of three major stuff. So autonomic nervous system controls smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, glands. Okay, it usually operates without conscious control. So let's see here. These three structures are the main targets of the autonomic nervous system, these three. Okay, so a smooth muscle like your GI tract wall, cardiac muscle like your muscle of the heart, and the glands, all the glands are also controlled by autonomic nervous system. Okay, it usually operates without conscious control. You don't control your heart rate or breathing rate. It operates without our knowledge, and it is regulated by all the main center in our brain, and those are the cerebral cortex, gray matter area, the hypothalamus in the diencephalon, and the medulla oblongata in the brain. So three major rims as well as some limbic system works with this. Okay. So as I told earlier, autonomic nervous system is visceral motor system, and you're going to see in this flow chart. So let's say this side it is sensory path and this side is motor path. You see somatic sensory means the sensation from your touch, pain, pressure, vibration, temperature, balance in the skin and the limbs, hearing, vision, and balance from the outer body part, but internal body sensation like general sensation of stretch, pain, temperature, chemical change, irritation in viscera, nausea, vomiting, and a special sense, taste and smell. These all sensation, whether it's from outside the body or inside the body, through the sensory afferent division goes to your to the cranial and spinal nerve, and then from the cranial and spinal nerve it go to spinal central nervous system, which is the spinal cord and the brain. In the brain dictates and determines what should be the response, and then from there motor efferent division start from there, and they form somatic motor neuron and then visceral motor. So somatic motor means the motor neurons which controls the skeletal muscles. So motor innervation of skeletal muscles. And visceral motor is the motor control of those three structure. Again, what are those three structure? Smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and the glands, which is also called autonomic nervous system. So in the next time in the exam, if I ask a question, which one of the following is not the, for example, I'm going to ask a question, which one of the following, which one of the following is not the part of, not the effector organ of autonomic nervous system, ANS. So yeah, I put a smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, glands, and a skeletal muscle. Then skeletal muscles will not be the part of autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system has two basic division, sympathetic division and parasympathetic division. Sympathetic division is active during emergency and excitement, whereas parasympathetic division is dominant during rest and digest. Okay. So if you remember the peripheral nervous system last time we covered, the neurons from the brain and to the skeletal muscles. Once it get out of the spinal cord or brain, there is only one neuron from the brain or spinal cord which reaches the skeletal muscle, only one. But autonomic nervous neurons have two order of neurons. So there is a slightly complex structure in the autonomic nervous system. That's why autonomic activity is very fast and within control, whereas, the voluntary skeletal muscle action is voluntary and very fast, whereas autonomic activities are slow. Okay, so ANS has two neurons in its efferent pathway, and in between them there is a group of neuron cell bodies where the synapse, we call them ganglia, and the neuron before that is called preganglionic neuron or first neuron. Okay, so ANS has two neurons in a different pathway. The first neuron is called preganglionic neuron because their cell bodies has cell body in the brain or spinal cord. Their cell bodies are in the brain or spinal cord. And the neuron which is outside the brain and spinal cord, their cell bodies are in the ganglia. So we call them second neuron or postganglionic neuron in autonomic ganglia. Do you remember there was sensory ganglia too? But this is autonomic ganglia. These are the motor ganglia. Postganglionic axon extend from autonomic ganglia to the target tissue. And those target tissues are a smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and gland. So let's see here. This is the brain, spinal cord. This is the central nervous system. Let's see if this muscle is the wall of your intestine. If it is biceps muscle, what will happen? Here you will see only one neuron from a spinal cord. But this is autonomic nervous system. So you see here, there is ganglia. Here for simplification, we are showing only one neuron cell bodies here, but in real life, there will be more than one cell body. That's why we call it ganglia. So this is autonomic ganglia. The neuron from in the autonomic ganglia is called postganglionic neuron. And the neuron before the autonomic ganglia is called preganglionic neuron. Their cell bodies are here in the spinal cord or in the brain. So that is the difference between somatic motor neuron and autonomic motor neuron. Again, keep in mind, what is the difference between somatic motor neuron and autonomic motor neuron? There are two divisions of the autonomic nervous system, ANS. It is sympathetic and parasympathetic. And these two autonomic systems are paired in each organ. That means pretty much each and every visceral organs are controlled by both sympathetic and parasympathetic. 90% time, 99% time, your visceral organs are under the control of parasympathetic nervous system. When there is excitement, emergency, fight, flight, and stress, that's the situation when sympathetic nervous system mediates its action. When there is rest and digest, that is the action of parasympathetic nervous system. So let's see, when you are sitting down, sleeping quietly, it is parasympathetic nervous system. But when you see another car is coming straight in front of you and trying to do the accident, that time your sympathetic nervous system activates. In this diagram, you can see effect of autonomic nerve stimulation on various effector organs. So here is effector organ, here are sympathetic effect and parasympathetic effect. You don't have to memorize these all action here, but you should take some ideas. So what your idea will be here, pretty much in every organ there is opposite action, okay? So let's see the radial muscle iris. Your iris, the pupil dilates with sympathetic action. Okay, if there is no sympathetic action, then pupil remains constricted. Okay, iris sphincter muscle, constrictor of the pupil. Okay, similarly, let's go to heart. Rate increased by sympathetic, decreased by parasympathetic. Conduction, increase, decrease. Force of contraction, increase by sympathetic. There is no effect of parasympathetic on that. So if you go all the organs, this is the effect. If you go to penis, it is slightly different function. Ejaculation is due to sympathetic, and parasympathetic is erection due to vasodilation of the blood vessel in the penis. Okay. Okay. So now question comes, both sympathetic and parasympathetic neurons, autonomic neurons, have two order of neurons. That means they have two neurons after the brain and the spinal cord. They all are, both of them are in each visceral organ, but they have opposite effect in the organ. Do you know why? Because they produce different neurotransmitters at their action terminal. Okay? And those different neurotransmitters binds with different receptor on the target cell. And that's why they have different effect, because they open different kind of channels in the plasma membrane of the target organ cells, like gland cells, muscle cells, cardiac muscle cells. Okay. So apart from that, these preganglionic and postganglionic neurons of the sympathetic and parasympathetic exit from different region of the autonomic nervous system. Different region of the brain and spinal cord. So let's see here. This is sympathetic. Sympathetic is also called thoracolumbar nerve. Why we call them thoracolumbar nerve, these three? Because they exit from the region of thoracic spinal cord, lumbar spinal cord, thoracic and lumbar spinal cord. That's why these all thoracic and lumbar region. That's why you call them thoracolumbar. Whereas parasympathetic is called sympathetic is craniosacral, because their preganglionic neuron exit from brain region and the sacral region of a spinal cord. See these two. Okay. Okay, let's see here. All sympathetic preganglionic neuron and all parasympathetic preganglionic neuron are releasing same kind of neurotransmitter. You see here? What are those neurotransmitters? They are ACH. ACH is acetylcholine. ACH is acetylcholine. Okay. ACH. Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine. Okay. Acetylcholine. Now, up to now, they are the same, except they are coming from the different region, but they are releasing same neurotransmitter. What about postganglionic neuron? Let's talk about first sympathetic. Norepinephrine, NE is norepinephrine, norepinephrine, norepinephrine. Parasympathetic, acetylcholine, acetylcholine. So you see the postganglionic neuron are releasing different neurotransmitter in sympathetic and parasympathetic. Some more differences. Preganglionic fibers are pretty much similar in both sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. But if you see postganglionic fiber of parasympathetic are very small, and their ganglia are pretty much in the wall of the organ they control. Okay, so these are the difference. Number one, sympathetic is thoracolumbar outflow, parasympathetic is craniosacral outflow. All preganglionic neuron of both sympathetic and parasympathetic release the same neurotransmitter that is called acetylcholine. Postganglionic neuron of parasympathetic nervous system release norepinephrine, whereas postganglionic parasympathetic release acetylcholine. So sympathetic release norepinephrine and parasympathetic release acetylcholine. That's why they have different effect. Okay. So both sympathetic and parasympathetic preganglionic release acetylcholine, parasympathetic postganglionic also release acetylcholine, and that's why their effect is called cholinergic, or their synapses where the synapse with the target organ is called cholinergic because the acetylcholine has choline. Most sympathetic postganglionic release norepinephrine, okay, called adrenergic. But in the skin and other location, they also release acetylcholine, okay. Adrenergic stimulation. So let's see when the norepinephrine and epinephrine is released, what they do. They bind with the receptor. So what are the receptors they bind with? Let's see here. Adrenergic stimulation or sympathetic stimulation cause both excitation and inhibition depending on tissue because of different subtypes of receptor for same neurotransmitters. Okay, so let's see here. There are two major subtypes, alpha and beta adrenergic receptor. So adrenergic receptor or receptor for the epinephrine and norepinephrine are two types, alpha and beta. Each has own subtypes. Alpha has alpha 1, alpha 2, and beta has beta 1, beta 2. So you can see these organs and their effect. Like in eye, what is the effect of sympathetic in eye? Contraction of radial muscle cause pupil dilation. And this is because they bind with the alpha 1 receptor. In the heart, when epinephrine binds with the receptor on the cardiac muscle cells or in the node cells, they bind with B1 receptor. And B1 receptor basically increase when the epinephrine binds with the B1 receptor, norepinephrine, they increase the heart rate and increase the force of contraction of the heart rate because binding with B1 receptor, they open the sodium channel and other the stimulatory channels. Okay, so that's why if somebody has high blood pressure, then we treat with beta blocker. You see, beta blocker like albuterol. It's called propranolol. Propranolol, one of the example. So this medication binds with this beta 1 receptor on your heart, and it inhibits the rate and force of contraction of the heart and reduce your blood pressure. It is very much used, like it's commonly used medication in the heart. Similarly, you see there is all the receptor in different organs, okay, and their effect. Now let's talk about the neurotransmitters. So you see here parasympathetic and sympathetic division. So parasympathetic is releasing acetylcholine, and then they bind with nicotinic acetylcholic receptor. They bind to the receptor which is like nicotine receptor, where nicotine, tobacco nicotine binds. Okay, and then postganglionic neuron release acetylcholine that stimulates muscarinic receptors on the target cells. Whereas sympathetic norepinephrine binds with alpha-1, cause vasoconstriction, beta-1 increase heart rate and contractility, beta-2 increase bronchodilation. So if somebody has asthma, what do? We give the medication which acts like epinephrine on beta receptor, or which medicine which activates the beta receptor. That's why we use terbutaline, which is bronchodilator, okay? And they bind with beta-2 receptor. So the drug which binds, let's see here, propranolol binds with beta-1 receptor and block this receptor. That's why they are antagonist. Whereas terbutaline, which is a bronchodilator, which increase the size of your bronchus, that is agonist. They bind with B2 receptor and does the same function whatever epinephrine do here. Okay, so they are drugs that promote action of neurotransmitter are agonists, and drugs that inhibit action of neurotransmitter are antagonists. So terbutaline is agonist of beta-1, beta-2, and propranolol, which I wrote earlier, is antagonist to beta-1. Cholinergic stimulation, so like acetylcholine, when acetylcholine released, they bind with nicotine receptor or muscarinic receptor. The cholinergic receptors are two types, nicotinic, which is stimulated by nicotine and blocked by curare. So nicotinic receptor, acetylcholine binds with the same receptor where tobacco binds. And when it binds, it relaxes your sphincter, anal sphincter, urethral sphincter, and that's why an individual who always smoke, they need to smoke before they go to restroom, because they have to relax the sphincter of the anus. They need to take tobacco. Okay. There is curare, is a plant product, poison. If you give somebody this, they bind with nicotine receptor, and this receptor is also found on the skeletal muscles. So Native American used to use this curare on their arrowhead, and those poison used to bind with the receptor on the skeletal muscle of the animals and used to paralyze the animals, and then they could catch easily alive. The muscarinic, another kind of receptor for the acetylcholine is muscarinic, which is stimulated by muscarine, which is a poison from the mushroom, and blocked by atropine. Atropine is also plant product from Atropa belladonna. Okay. So you see here the acetylcholine receptors comparison here, what they do. I said earlier, any neurotransmitter where they are released, they bind with the receptor. And then once they bind in the target cell, they open the channel. So let's see here. Nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, when they bind here with the receptor, what does it do? Open sodium channel. And you know, when sodium channel opens into any cell, the cell is depolarized and it excites. When it binds with the receptor here, this is muscarinic, acetylcholine muscarinic receptor, what does it do? It opens potassium channel. Where is more potassium? Inside the cell. So potassium will go out, and that will cause inhibition, hyperpolarization and inhibition. Sometimes acetylcholine will bind with the muscarinic receptor, or sometimes they bind with the G protein, and then they activate. So these are the G protein, And what they do, they close the potassium channel, open sodium channel, and slowly excite the serum. That's how cells act, okay? So this is the receptors, tissue response and mechanism, cholinergic receptor and response at acetylcholine, which we explained here earlier. This is just table to explain that. So the control of autonomic nervous system is by brain centers, higher brain centers. If you remember from the central nervous system, it is cerebral cortex, it is medulla oblongata, hypothalamus. Those are the main center of the autonomic nervous system. So the medulla oblongata most directly control activity of ANS. It has center for control of cardiovascular, means blood vessel and heart, pulmonary, urinary, reproductive, and digestive system. Hypothalamus has center for control of body temperature, hunger, thirst, and can regulate medulla. Limbic system is responsible for visceral response that reflect emotional states, and cerebral cortex and cerebellum also influence. So higher brain centers are controlling the autonomic nervous system, okay? This is all in the autonomic nervous system. This system is very, very important when you go in real clinical practice, like when you go to nursing and when you learn about neurological drugs, like any neurological drugs, they all will be discussing about how they bind with the receptor and how they act. Today, I'm going to ask you one thing. Do you remember when you have any surgery in your any body part, local body part? Let's say you have surgery in skin or finger or toe. Then what doctor do? They give you local anesthetics like Zylocard or lidocaine. Okay, local anesthetic. For example, lidocaine. So what does lidocaine do? Do you remember action potential generation in the neuron? And now just we do as the postsynaptic neuron, when sodium channel open, what they depolarize. So lidocaine inhibits or blocks voltage gated sodium channels. In the membrane of neuron or any other organs, cells. Okay, that's how local anesthetic works. So what they do, they don't play with any chloride channel or other, they play with sodium channel. Okay, that is all for today. Thank you very much. Take care.